Many people are chasing opportunities, but they are not prepared for divine appointments. They run after moments that look glamorous, but they resist the process that carries destiny. They celebrate open doors, but they cannot discern whether the door was opened by God or presented by pressure. They want promotion, but they do not want wilderness. They want purpose, but they do not want preparation. And here is the contradiction. Some believers are asking God for destiny while fighting the very path He is using to bring them into it. There is a huge difference between an opportunity and a divine appointment. An opportunity may look like a moment that can change your life, but a divine appointment is the change that alters the direction, weight, purpose, and legacy of your life. An opportunity is something you may decide to take or leave. A divine appointment is something God has written into your journey. And when it comes, it carries a weight you cannot ignore. Opportunities can return in different forms, but divine appointments are sacred moments in God's timing. They are not just doors, they are assignments. They are not just chances, they are encounters with purpose. The problem is that many people have been trained to look for opportunities, but not prepared to recognize divine appointments. We are taught to network, position ourselves, meet the right person, enter the right room, attach ourselves to the right platform, and find the next colorful door. None of that is automatically wrong. But if you do not have discernment, a glamorous opportunity can distract you from a divine appointment. Sometimes what looks impressive can pull you out of obedience. Sometimes what looks like increase can place you under bondage. Sometimes what looks like a shortcut can cost you the very purpose God was preparing you to carry. Here is the spiritual principle. Opportunities often appear beautiful, but divine appointments often begin with pressure. A divine appointment does not always arrive wearing the clothes of promotion. Sometimes it arrives looking like betrayal. Sometimes it arrives looking like loss. Sometimes it looks like wilderness, rejection, silence, or a sudden drying up of things that once flowed easily. This is why many believers miss it. They assume that if God is leading them, the path must immediately feel comfortable. But Scripture says, many are the afflictions of the righteous, and the Lord delivers him out of them all. God is not embarrassed to speak about affliction because He knows affliction is not the end of the righteous. Deliverance is. This does not mean suffering is the goal. It means suffering can become a passage. It can become a refining place. It can become the place where false desires lose their voice and the will of God becomes clearer. If you do not understand this, you will call every difficult season an attack and every glamorous offer a blessing. But some attacks are actually distractions, and some difficult seasons are divine preparation. Discernment is knowing the difference. Look at Joseph. His divine appointment did not begin in a palace. It began with hatred from his own brothers. It began with a pit. It continued through slavery. It moved through false accusation and prison. If Joseph had judged the hand of God by comfort, he would have thought God had left him. But the hand of God was on him even in the places that looked like loss. God was not wasting Joseph's pain. He was positioning him for a moment Joseph could not yet understand. Joseph was being prepared ahead of time to preserve the very family that had wounded him. This is why you must learn to recognize the hand of God upon you. Most believers measure God's hand by material comfort. If they are healthy, they say God's hand is on them. If they have money, they say God's hand is on them. If they live in a good place, they say God's hand is on them. These things can be blessings, but they are not always proof of divine appointment. The world can have health, the world can have money, the world can live by the sea. The world can enter impressive rooms. So we cannot measure the hand of God only by what the world can also possess. How do you recognize the hand of God? You begin to notice that even what was painful is working for your good. Not merely for your comfort, but for your formation. Not merely for your bank account, but for your obedience. Not merely for your image, but for your destiny. God's hand is seen when what was meant to break you begins to produce wisdom. God's hand is seen when what should have made you bitter begins to make you deeper. God's hand is seen when the wilderness does not destroy your faith but sharpens your discernment. But there is danger when the devil presents an opportunity in the season of hunger. Hunger can make a person vulnerable. Pressure can make compromise look reasonable. Need can make bondage look like provision. The enemy knows how to offer something that appears to solve your immediate pain while quietly stealing your obedience. When Jesus finished fasting, the devil did not come to him when his body was strong and comfortable. He came when he was hungry. He came at the vulnerable point and offered shortcuts. He offered bread. He offered display. He offered kingdoms. But every offer was designed to pull Jesus away from the Father's path. This is why you must guard your stomach, not only physically, but spiritually. Guard the place of appetite. Guard the place of desperation. Guard the place where pressure makes you willing to accept what God did not send. The devil often fishes believers out of divine appointment when they are suffering. He waits until the wilderness feels too dry. Then he presents an opportunity that looks like relief. But if taking that opportunity requires compromise, silence where God called you to stand, bondage to people, or the loss of your freedom to obey Jesus, then you must discern it carefully. An opportunity from the enemy may put money in your account while placing chains around your obedience. It may give you access while making you answerable to people in a way that silences your witness. It may make you look successful while slowly moving you away from your assignment. And when conviction rises, you may begin to say, God understands my heart. But many times, that phrase becomes a hiding place for compromise. If you keep choosing what pulls you away from obedience, then it is not just pressure. It is revealing what the heart has agreed to. Wisdom is needed here. This does not mean you force Jesus into every room without discernment and call the reaction persecution. A fisherman is strategic. A person who wins souls must be wise. Even Jesus knew when to speak, when to remain silent, where to reveal, and where not to entrust himself. Boldness without wisdom can become foolishness. But wisdom must never become compromise. There is a holy balance. Do not be careless with your witness, and do not sell your witness for opportunity. The Lord is calling you to prepare for your divine appointment. That preparation may look different than you expected. It may begin with a wilderness. It may begin with a season where what used to be easy becomes difficult. It may begin after you fall in love with God and suddenly find yourself tested in places you thought would be protected. But do not panic. If you are in the wilderness and your heart still loves God, you are in good company. The wilderness is not always evidence of abandonment. Sometimes it is the path into divine appointment. Because when God is preparing you, He is not merely opening doors. He is forming the person who can enter the door and remain faithful. He is teaching you to discern opportunity from appointment, glamour from purpose, compromise from wisdom, and pressure from preparation. And if the hand of God is upon you, even the wilderness will not be wasted. It will become the place where your destiny is protected, your appetite is purified, and your spirit is made ready for the appointment you cannot afford to miss. Many people do not recognize their divine appointment because they have been trained to worship comfort. They think the hand of God is only present when everything is smooth, when money is flowing, when people are clapping, when doors are opening, and when life feels easy. But the hand of God is often most active when the road becomes narrow, when the wilderness becomes dry, when the appetite is being tested, and when the shortcut looks tempting. And here is the contradiction. Some believers are asking God to prove His hand is upon them, while standing in the very wilderness that proves He is preparing them. Here is the spiritual principle. The wilderness is not always a sign that you are outside God's will. Sometimes it is the path into divine appointment. Jesus lived 30 years before the public moment came. He loved the Father, he obeyed, he grew, he lived hidden. But when he came to the Jordan, when the heavens opened, when the Spirit descended, when the Father said, "This is my beloved Son," what happened next? Immediately, the Spirit led him into the wilderness, not into applause, not into a throne room, not into comfort, into wilderness. That should change the way you interpret your life. Some of you thought the moment God affirmed you, everything would become easier. You thought the moment you truly surrendered, doors would open without resistance. You thought the moment you started praying, serving, loving God, and wanting His will, the dry places would disappear. But sometimes surrender is what positions you for the wilderness. Not because God hates you, not because God is punishing you, but because the wilderness exposes appetite, strengthens obedience, and confronts every voice that would later try to steal your destiny. If Jesus had to confront the devil in the wilderness before walking into public ministry, why do you think you can step into destiny without being tested? The wilderness reveals what will rule you. Will bread rule you, or will the word rule you? Will visibility rule you, or will obedience rule you? Will power rule you, or will worship rule you? The devil did not tempt Jesus with random things. He tempted him at the level of identity, appetite, display, authority, and shortcut. In other words, he attacked the path of divine appointment. This is why the devil often comes when you are hungry. Hunger can make the wrong thing look right. Hunger can make a shortcut look like wisdom. Hunger can make compromise sound practical. Hunger can make you say, "God understands," when what you really mean is, "I am choosing relief over obedience." The enemy knows that a hungry person can sell what a satisfied person would protect. Esau sold his birthright for a meal because appetite became louder than destiny. That is why you must guard your stomach, guard your appetite, guard the place where need speaks loudly, guard the place where pressure tries to negotiate with your obedience. An opportunity can look like provision while becoming a prison. It can put money in your hand while taking freedom from your spirit. It can give access while making you answerable to people in ways that silence your assignment. It can place you in a room but require you to leave your conviction at the door. And when that happens, you will eventually find yourself choosing between the opportunity and God. Then the language of compromise begins. God knows my heart. God will understand, I did not really mean it, but your repeated choices reveal the agreement of your heart. Wisdom is not compromise. Wisdom helps you obey rightly, not escape obedience. This is why discernment is not optional. A believer must know the difference between a door opened by God and bait presented by pressure. Not every attractive offer is divine. Not every connection is covenant. Not every invitation is assignment. Not every promotion is from heaven. The devil offered Jesus kingdoms. It looked like influence. It looked like access. It looked like the very thing Jesus came to reclaim. But the method required worship in the wrong direction. That is how the enemy works. He offers the right-looking result through the wrong spiritual agreement. Here is the correction. Stop measuring divine appointment by glamour. Stop assuming that if something looks bigger, brighter, and easier, it must be God. Sometimes God's path begins by stripping you, not decorating you. Sometimes He leads you away from the crowd before He sends you to the crowd. Sometimes He allows silence before authority. Sometimes He permits hidden warfare before public usefulness. Sometimes He keeps you in a dry place long enough for you to learn that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. The wilderness teaches you what you truly live by. In the easy place, people can say all kinds of spiritual things. But when appetite rises, when doors close, when resources dry up, when people misunderstand, When the future feels uncertain, that is when the foundation speaks. Do you live by bread alone? Do you live by applause? Do you live by financial comfort? Do you live by being liked? Do you live by visible progress? Or do you live by the word of God? Many believers are delayed, not because the devil has more power than God, but because God is preserving them from missing the appointment. If God loves you, He may keep you in the wilderness until your appetite is no longer strong enough to sell your future. He may keep you there until the shortcut loses its beauty. He may keep you there until you stop confusing relief with destiny. He may keep you there until obedience becomes more precious than opportunity. This is not punishment, it is protection. A divine appointment does not always return the way an opportunity does. Opportunities may come again, but divine appointments carry timing. They carry generational weight. They carry assignment. They carry things connected not only to you, but to people God intends to touch through you. Joseph could not afford to miss his appointment. His suffering was not only about him. His process was tied to preservation. His pain was tied to a future harvest. His wilderness was preparing him to feed the very people who once betrayed him. If Joseph had escaped process too early, he may have missed the throne. If he had chosen bitterness, he may have missed the interpretation. If he had allowed the prison to define him, he may have missed the moment when Pharaoh needed what God had trained in him. The pit, the house of Potiphar, the prison, and the palace were not random chapters. They were a path. He did not understand all of it while walking through it, but the hand of God was upon him. So do not despise the season that is teaching you obedience. Do not curse the place where your appetite is being purified. Do not run from the wilderness simply because it is dry. Ask God for wisdom. Ask God for discernment. Ask God to expose every opportunity that is secretly bait and every painful path that is truly preparation. Ask Him to make you strategic, not foolish. Bold, not careless. Faithful, not compromised. Because if you overcome the devil in the wilderness, you will recognize him when he appears again in destiny. If you resist the shortcut in the dry place, you will not sell your calling in the public place. If you learn to live by the word when bread is scarce, you will not worship bread when abundance comes. And when your divine appointment arrives, you will not enter it as a slave to appetite, but as a servant formed by God. Many people do not fail because there is no destiny for them. They fail because they cannot endure the path that protects destiny. They want the palace, but they reject the pit. They want the throne, but they curse the prison. They want the divine appointment, but they keep trying to escape the wilderness. And here is the contradiction. Some believers are praying for God to use them greatly, while asking Him to remove every season that would make them strong enough to be used. Here is the spiritual principle. The wilderness is not only a place of testing, it is a place of spiritual confrontation. Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. That means the Father did not accidentally allow Jesus to enter a dry place. The Spirit led him there. The wilderness was not outside the plan. It was the first battlefield before public ministry. If Jesus had not overcome the devil in the wilderness, the devil would have appeared again later with greater leverage. But because Jesus overcame in the hidden place, he walked into public assignment with authority. You must understand this. The enemy you refuse to confront in the wilderness may defeat you in the place of destiny. A hunger you do not bring under the word in secret can become a scandal in public. A need for validation that is not crucified in the dry place can become pride when people begin to clap. A compromise you justify when nobody knows, you can become the chain that controls you when influence comes. This is why God lets the wilderness expose what is still speaking loudly inside you. He is not trying to embarrass you. He is trying to deliver you before the appointment arrives. When the devil tempted Jesus, he attacked appetite first. Command these stones to become bread. That was not merely about food. It was about whether Jesus would use power to serve hunger outside the Father's will. Then the devil attacked display. Throw yourself down. That was about visibility, spectacle, proving identity through performance. Then he attacked worship and shortcut. All these kingdoms I will give you if you bow. That was about receiving influence without the cross. These are still the temptations that come to believers today. Appetite, performance, and shortcut. And notice when the temptation came, it came after fasting. It came when the body was weak. It came when hunger was real. The devil is strategic. He often waits until the pressure is high, the need is loud, and the soul is tired. He comes when you're asking, how did my life dry up like this? Why is money suddenly tight? Why do doors feel closed? Why did peace become a battle? Why did everything become difficult after I gave myself to God? That is when an opportunity can appear that looks like relief. But if it requires you to bow in the wrong direction, it is not God. Here is the correction. Do not sell a divine appointment for temporary bread. Do not trade eternal purpose for immediate relief. Do not call a shortcut favor because it reduces pressure quickly. Sometimes the fastest answer is the wrong answer. Sometimes the door that opens easily leads to bondage. Sometimes the opportunity that looks like rescue is actually bait. If it requires compromise, if it silences obedience, if it makes you answerable to ungodly pressure, if it pulls you away from the word, if it makes you excuse sin by saying, God knows my heart, then you must stop and discern. But also, do not become foolish in the name of boldness. Wisdom matters. A fisherman knows when to cast the net. He does not disturb the waters and call it evangelism. He does not throw bait carelessly and call it zeal. He understands timing, patience, strategy, and the nature of what he is trying to catch. In the same way, the believer must know when to speak, how to speak, where to speak, and what the Holy Spirit is actually saying. Not every loud mention of Jesus is wisdom. Not every reaction against you is persecution. Sometimes people did not reject your faith. They reacted to your lack of wisdom. The Lord is not calling you to hide Jesus. He is calling you to represent Him rightly. Boldness without wisdom can become noise. Wisdom without courage can become compromise. You need both. The Spirit of God gives wisdom so that your witness is not careless. And He gives courage so that your wisdom does not become cowardice. Divine appointment requires a person who can discern the moment, obey the word, and refuse both foolishness and compromise. Joseph carried this kind of formation. His divine appointment required more than dreams. Dreams revealed destiny, but suffering developed the man who could carry destiny. In his father's house, Joseph had dreams, but he did not yet know how to interpret the weight of God's movement. In Egypt, through slavery and prison, he began to understand the language of God more deeply. Nobody taught him in a classroom. The process sharpened him. The suffering trained his prophetic sensitivity. The prison became a school. The delay became a furnace. The rejection became preparation. This is why you must not despise the pressure that is making you sharp. Some lessons are only learned when options are limited. Some roots are only exposed when life becomes quiet. Some patterns are only revealed when you have nothing external to blame. When everything is going well, you can point to many things and avoid the real issue. But in the wilderness, the excuses begin to fall away. You begin to see what is really in your heart. You begin to recognize appetites, fears, pride, wounds, and spirits that have been looking for opportunities to derail you. Do not be surprised if the same old battle appears again when you are close to destiny. It may not be a new enemy. It may be an old spirit looking for a new opportunity. It has been watching appetite, watching pain, watching insecurity, watching impatience, waiting for the moment when you are hungry enough to compromise. But if you let the wilderness do its work, that old enemy will find a different person. It will approach you with the same bait, but you will answer with a different spirit. You will say, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. The wilderness teaches you that purpose is greater than money. Money is useful. Money can serve assignment. Money can solve practical needs. But money is not the goal. If money becomes the goal, the devil can buy your obedience with an opportunity. After you have bought the house, the car, the clothes, and the visible things, the soul still asks, why am I here? Purpose is the greater blessing. Divine appointment is the greater treasure. A person with money but no purpose is still poor in the place that matters most. A person with purpose can pass through wilderness without losing direction. This is why God may keep you in the dry place longer than you expected. Not because He enjoys your pain, not because He forgot you, but because He loves you enough to keep you from missing the appointment. If your appetite is still louder than obedience, the wilderness continues teaching. If shortcuts still look beautiful, the wilderness continues cleansing. If you still think destiny is mainly material, the wilderness continues correcting. If your heart still says yes to what would enslave you, the wilderness continues protecting. So do not rush out of preparation and call it faith. Let God finish what He's doing. Ask Him to open your eyes. Ask Him to show you where opportunity has been disguised as appointment. Ask Him to reveal where hunger is making you vulnerable. Ask Him to give you wisdom, endurance, discernment, and holy courage. Ask Him to teach you to live by every word that proceeds from His mouth. Because when the divine appointment arrives, you will need more than excitement. You will need formation. You will need a purified appetite, a steady mind, a surrendered heart, and a spirit trained to recognize the voice of God. And if you overcome in the wilderness, you will not bow in the moment of destiny. Many people are in the wilderness, but they do not recognize the shepherd. They see the dryness, but not the hand guiding them. They see the pressure, but not the purpose being protected. They see the valley, but not the rod and staff comforting them. They see the battle, but not the presence walking beside them. And here is the contradiction. Some believers say the Lord is their shepherd, but the moment He leads them through a valley, they assume He has abandoned them. Here is the spiritual principle. The wilderness is not proof that the shepherd is absent. It may be the path where His presence becomes most necessary. David said, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He spoke of green pastures, still waters, restoration, and righteous paths. But then suddenly, he said, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. How did David end up in the valley if the shepherd was leading him? Because sometimes the path to the prepared table passes through shadows. Sometimes the road to still waters includes places that test whether you trust the shepherd more than the scenery. You did not lead yourself into every difficult place. Some places were part of the journey. Some valleys were not punishment, they were passage. Some dry seasons were not abandonment, they were training. Some battles were not evidence that you had lost God's hand. They were evidence that your destiny had weight. If the shepherd is with you, even the valley cannot define you. It can frighten your flesh, but it cannot destroy your covenant. It can surround you with shadows, but it cannot remove His presence. This is why you must stop interpreting your life only by the atmosphere around you. A dry place does not mean God is dry. A silent season does not mean God has nothing to say. A hard road does not mean the appointment is gone. When Jesus entered the wilderness, He was not rejected by the Father. He had just heard, this is my beloved Son. The wilderness came after affirmation, not after abandonment. The Spirit led Him there, and the Word sustained Him there. That means a beloved Son can be led into a difficult place without losing the Father's love. Some of you are asking, how did I get here? You loved God, you prayed, you surrendered, you wanted to be in His presence, you began taking your walk seriously, and then suddenly things dried up. What used to be easy became difficult. What used to flow became tight. What used to comfort you began to test you. And the enemy whispered, if God loved you, you would not be here. But that is the same spirit that came to Jesus and said, if you are the Son of God. The wilderness often begins with an attack against identity. Here is the correction. Do not let the wilderness rename you. Do not let hunger call you forgotten. Do not let delay call you rejected. Do not let dryness call you cursed. Do not let pressure call you abandoned. If the Father has spoken over you, the wilderness does not have the right to rewrite His word. Jesus did not answer the devil with emotion. He answered with what was written. In your wilderness, you must learn to let the word be louder than the weather. You must learn to live by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. The wilderness exposes what you have been living by. If you have been living by applause, silence will break you. If you have been living by money, lack will shake you. If you have been living by comfort, pressure will confuse you. If you have been living by validation, rejection will make you sell yourself. But if you live by the word, then the wilderness becomes a place where appetite bows, fear weakens, and obedience becomes stronger than relief. This is why divine appointments require perseverance. Not everybody enters them because not everybody is willing to endure the process. Many people want success, but not sacrifice. They want purpose, but not pruning. They want authority, but not hidden obedience. They want the promise, but not the preparation that keeps the promise from destroying them. God is not trying to waste your time. He is trying to make sure you do not miss what cannot be repeated. A divine appointment carries generational weight. It is not just a moment of personal excitement. It may affect your children, your household, your calling, your community, your future, and people you have not even met. This is why God takes preparation seriously. He will not rush you into something that your appetite can sell. He will not place you in a weighty position while your hunger can still be purchased by the enemy. He will keep forming you until your obedience becomes more valuable to you than immediate relief. Look at Joseph again. His wilderness was not a desert in the natural sense, but it was a long, dry road through betrayal, slavery, false accusation, and prison. Yet God was keeping his mind. That is one of the greatest signs of the shepherd. Joseph suffered, but he did not become destroyed inside. He was wounded, but he did not lose the ability to hear God. He was delayed, but he did not lose purpose. He was forgotten by people, but he was not forgotten by God. The shepherd was with him, even when the path did not look like favor. When Joseph finally saw his brothers, something broke open. The pain found meaning. The questions found an answer. He realized that God had sent him ahead to preserve life. That does not mean what his brothers did was righteous. It means God's hand was greater than their evil. Joseph could have used power for revenge, but because his mind had been preserved, he used power for purpose. That is what formation does. It keeps you from turning destiny into vengeance. Some people cannot be trusted with power because the wilderness did not heal them. It only made them bitter. They enter the palace still carrying the prison as identity. They receive authority but use it to punish everyone who reminds them of pain. But Joseph had a different spirit. When the divine appointment came, he could see God's hand. He could say, "You meant evil, but God meant it for good." That is not weakness. That is spiritual maturity. That is the fruit of a preserved mind. The Lord has kept your mind more than you realize. You call it toughness, but it was mercy. You call it inner strength, but it was grace. You call it survival, but the shepherd was sustaining you. There were things that could have broken your mind, but you are still here. There were battles that could have buried your hope, but something inside kept whispering, "One day I will come out. One day God will lift me. One day this will make sense. One day the suffering will not compare to the glory. That whisper was not just positive thinking. It was the mercy of God holding you together. So be grateful that your mind is still in place. Be grateful that you can still pray. Be grateful that you can still hear truth. Be grateful that you still desire God after everything you have walked through. That is evidence that the shepherd is with you. If he has kept your mind, he has kept your heart. Everything else fighting for your attention may be a distraction. The enemy wants you to lose focus on God because perfect peace belongs to the mind stayed on him. Here is the instruction. If you cannot control it, give it to him and keep your peace. Peace is not denial. Peace is the act of letting God be God. Peace says, I cannot force this door, but I can trust the shepherd. Peace says, I cannot explain this valley, but I know he is with me. Peace says, I cannot control what people meant for evil, but I believe God can work it for good. Peace says, I will not lose my mind over what belongs in the hands of God. You are being positioned. You may not feel it, but you are being positioned. The wilderness is not your final address. The valley is not your identity. The dry place is not your destiny. It is one of the stops on the path. The shepherd is walking with you, correcting you, comforting you, strengthening you, and preparing you for the divine appointment you cannot afford to miss. Because when God keeps your mind in the wilderness, he's preparing your heart for the appointment. When he teaches you peace in the valley, he's preparing you for authority without revenge. And when you finally see why you had to pass through what you passed through, your cry will not be bitterness. It will be worship. Because you realize the shepherd was there all along. Many people are being positioned, but they keep calling positioning punishment. They are being sharpened, but they keep calling sharpening delay. They are being protected, but they keep calling protection rejection. They are being preserved for a divine appointment, but they keep begging God to return them to an old comfort that was never strong enough to carry their future. And here is the contradiction. Some believers are asking God for purpose while resisting the very wilderness that is teaching them how to carry purpose without losing their soul. Here is the spiritual principle. God uses the wilderness to reveal what you truly live by. Jesus answered the enemy by saying, "Men shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." That was not only a sentence for one moment of temptation. That was the foundation of divine appointment. Before Jesus moved publicly in power, he demonstrated privately that appetite would not be his master. Bread was real. Hunger was real. But the word of the Father was greater than both. If you do not learn this in the wilderness, abundance can become dangerous in destiny. Many believers say they want to live by the word, but the wilderness reveals whether that is true. When money is low, do you still obey? When doors close, do you still pray? When people misunderstand, do you still keep your heart clean? When the shortcut appears, do you still wait on God? When no one is clapping, do you still serve? When the promise feels delayed, do you still believe? The wilderness is not only dry ground, it is a mirror. It shows you what has been feeding you. It shows you whether you have lived by bread, attention, comfort, applause, control, or the word of God. This is why some people are not delayed by the devil. They are being held by mercy. God sees the divine appointment ahead, and he knows you cannot enter it ruled by appetite. He knows you cannot enter it if money can buy your silence. He knows you cannot enter it if rejection can break your identity. He knows you cannot enter it if visibility can awaken pride. He knows you cannot enter it if suffering makes you compromise. So he keeps working. He keeps refining. He keeps exposing. He keeps teaching you to choose him when another option looks easier. Do not misunderstand the love of God. God is not trying to make you suffer for the sake of suffering. He is not addicted to your pain. But he loves you too much to let you mistake opportunity for appointment. He loves you too much to let you take an open door that will enslave your obedience. He loves you too much to let you have influence before your appetite is submitted. He loves you too much to let you enter a generational assignment while still controlled by temporary hunger. Think about Joseph again. His suffering did not only place him in Egypt, it sharpened the gift inside him. In his father's house, he had dreams. In Egypt, he learned interpretation. In the pit, he learned silence. In slavery, he learned stewardship. In prison, he learned endurance. In forgottenness, he learned that God had not forgotten him. The process did not destroy the gift. It disciplined the man carrying the gift. By the time he stood before Pharaoh, he was not only gifted, he was formed. This is why your process is not wasted. The season that looks empty may be teaching you how to hear. The season that looks hidden may be teaching you how to serve. The season that looks unfair may be teaching you how to forgive. The season that looks delayed may be teaching you how not to worship timing. The season that looks dry may be teaching you how to live from the word instead of visible supply. God is bringing the best out of you, but the best often comes out through pressure. Here is the correction. Stop trying to skip stages. A skipped stage becomes a weakness waiting for a crisis. A skipped lesson returns as a greater test. A skipped wilderness creates a public vulnerability. Many people rise quickly and fall suddenly because they never overcame in the dry place. They had talent, but not formation. They had charisma, but not endurance. They had opportunity, but not divine appointment. They entered rooms before their spirit was ready to carry the weight of the room. If God is keeping you in preparation, cooperate with Him. Do not fight every hidden season. Do not curse every closed door. Do not despise every place where you feel unseen. Ask, Father, what are you teaching me here? Ask what appetite must bow here. Ask what fear must die here. Ask what compromise must be exposed here. Ask what part of me still believes bread is more necessary than your word. Those questions turn the wilderness into a classroom instead of a prison. But also, do not become addicted to suffering. There are people who suffer so long that suffering becomes their identity. They begin to believe pain makes them spiritual. They become suspicious of peace, afraid of blessing, and uncomfortable with joy. That is not maturity. The wilderness is a path, not a home. The valley is a passage, not your permanent address. God does not train you in the wilderness so you can worship the wilderness. He trains you there so you can enter the appointment clean, steady, and free. David said, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. He did not say, though I build a house there. You walk through, you learn there, you are comforted there, you discover the shepherd there. But you do not marry the valley. Some people need deliverance not only from comfort, but also from the false identity of perpetual struggle. They have been through so much that peace feels suspicious. But the shepherd does not lead you through shadows to keep you trapped in shadows. He leads you through because there is still a table ahead. The Lord wants your eyes opened. He wants you to see that the wilderness is one stop on the road of destiny. He wants you to recognize the hand of God even when the scenery is dry. He wants you to know that being squeezed does not mean being forsaken. If you love God with all your heart and you find yourself under pressure, do not immediately panic. Ask for discernment. You may be marching toward a divine appointment, and if your mind is still intact after what you passed through, give God praise. If you can still pray, give God praise. If you can still believe, give God praise. If you can still hear the whisper that says, one day I will come out, give God praise. That voice has been keeping you. That mercy has been sustaining you. That shepherd has been walking with you. You are not as strong as you thought. You are held. So let the wilderness finish its work, but do not let it become your identity. Let the process sharpen you, but do not let it make you bitter. Let pressure expose appetite, but do not bow to the shortcut. Let God position you, even if positioning looks like delay. because the appointment ahead is too sacred to enter unformed. And the God who led you into preparation will also lead you into purpose. Many people think they are stuck because nothing is moving. But sometimes God has stopped the wrong movement so he can position you correctly. They think the wilderness is delay, but it may be divine protection. They think the dry place is evidence that God has forgotten them, but it may be the very place where God is keeping them sharp, honest, and dependent. And here is the contradiction. Some believers are asking God to take them into destiny, but they keep trying to escape the place where destiny is being protected. Here is a spiritual principle. God will not rush you into a divine appointment if your appetite can still sell your purpose. This is why the wilderness matters. In the wilderness, the enemy comes after hunger. He comes after fear. He comes after identity. He comes after timing. It's after the places where your soul says, I need relief now. The temptation is not always obvious sin. Sometimes it is a shortcut. Sometimes it is a compromise that looks practical. Sometimes it is an opportunity that looks like rescue. But if it requires you to bow in the wrong direction, it is not from God. Jesus was hungry when the enemy came to him. The devil did not offer him something random. He offered him bread, display, and kingdoms. Bread speaks to appetite. Display speaks to proving yourself. Kingdoms speak to influence without the cross. These are the same temptations many people face when they are moving toward appointment. They want the need met quickly. They want people to know who they are quickly. They want influence without dying to self. But divine appointment cannot be carried by a person who is still ruled by appetite, insecurity, and shortcuts. This is why God may keep you in a dry season longer than you expected. Not because he enjoys watching you struggle. Not because he's punishing you for loving him. But because he knows the appointment ahead cannot be missed. Opportunities may come again, but divine appointments carry timing, assignment, and generational weight. If you miss an opportunity, another may appear later. But when God has appointed a moment tied to destiny, legacy, and obedience, he prepares you carefully so that you will not trade it for temporary relief. Some of you have been calling yourself delayed, but heaven may call you protected. You wanted the door to open quickly, but God saw that the door would have enslaved you. You wanted the connection to work, but God saw that the connection would have controlled you. You wanted the money to come through that route, but God saw that the route would have made you answerable to people who would silence your obedience. You wanted relief from pressure, but God saw that the relief would cost you the divine appointment. So he blocked what you begged for, not because he ignored you, but because he loved you. Here is the correction. Stop interpreting every closed door as rejection. Some closed doors are mercy. Some lost opportunities are deliverance. Some disappointments are divine interruption. Some delays are God saying, not this way, not at this price, not with this compromise, not with this chain attached. If taking the opportunity makes you lose spiritual freedom, it is too expensive. If entering the room requires you to leave obedience outside, it is too expensive. If receiving the blessing requires you to silence conviction, it is too expensive. If keeping the door open requires you to keep compromising, that is not divine appointment. That is bondage dressed as favor. The wilderness teaches you the cost of obedience before destiny requires it publicly. In the wilderness, nobody may know your name. Nobody may applaud your sacrifice. Nobody may understand the battle. But that is where your spirit learns to say no when the wrong thing is offered. That is where your heart learns that bread is not enough. That is where your mind learns that being seen is not the same as being sent. That is where your soul learns that purpose is greater than money and obedience is greater than opportunity. This is why purpose must become greater than material success. Money is useful, but money is not destiny. A house is good, but a house is not destiny. A platform can be useful, but a platform is not destiny. After a person gets the things they thought would satisfy them, the soul still asks, why am I here? The greatest blessing in life is not merely having things. The greatest blessing is purpose under God. When you know why you are alive, you stop selling yourself for things that only decorate emptiness. The enemy has deceived many believers into thinking the goal is money. So he offers money as bait. He offers position as bait. He offers access as bait. He offers relief as bait. But if money becomes your God, the enemy does not need to destroy you. He only needs to pay you. If attention becomes your God, he does not need to bind you. He only needs to make people look at you. If comfort becomes your God, he does not need to steal your calling. He only needs to make obedience uncomfortable enough for you to quit. Ask yourself, what can the enemy use to move you out of obedience? Is it hunger? Is it fear? Is it loneliness? Is it the desire to be recognized? Is it money? Is it the approval of powerful people? Is it the need to prove those who doubted you wrong? Whatever can move you out of obedience must be dealt with before the appointment. God is not exposing these things to shame you. He is exposing them to deliver you. Joseph had to be formed before he could stand in Egypt with clean authority. Imagine if Joseph had reached the palace full of revenge. Imagine if he had carried bitterness into power. Imagine if the throne had amplified his wounds instead of revealing his wisdom. But the process had done something in him. When his brothers came, he did not use authority to destroy them. He discerned the appointment. He saw that God had sent him ahead to preserve life. His pain had found purpose, and because his mind was kept, his power became a tool of mercy. That is what God is doing in you. He is not only trying to get you somewhere, he is trying to make sure that when you arrive, you do not become a danger to yourself and others. He is teaching you to carry power without revenge, blessing without pride, influence without compromise, authority without cruelty, and purpose without losing your soul. That is why the process matters. So let the wilderness reveal the appetite. Let it expose the shortcut. Let it uncover the fear. Let it show you what still wants to negotiate with compromise. But do not stay there as if suffering is your identity. The wilderness is a path. The valley is a passage. The dry place is a classroom. You are not called to worship pain. You are called to meet the shepherd there. Learn his voice. Overcome the enemy and continue toward the appointment. And if the Lord has kept your mind, give him glory. If you still have peace after what should have broken you, give him glory. If you still love God after the dry place, give him glory. If you still hear that quiet voice saying, God is not done with me, give him glory. That means the shepherd has been with you. That means your heart is still alive. That means your divine appointment has not been lost. Because when God protects your destiny, he may first confront your appetite. When God prepares your appointment, he may first lead you through wilderness. And when God keeps you from the wrong opportunity, it is because he is preserving you for something too sacred to sell. Many people are walking through the valley, but they have not understood that the valley did not cancel the shepherd. They see the shadow and forget the staff. They feel the pressure and forget the presence. They hear the noise of the battle and forget the voice that kept their mind from breaking. They are so focused on what is missing that they do not recognize what has been preserved. And here is the contradiction. Some believers say God has left them, while the very fact that they are still standing proves he has been holding them. Here is the spiritual principle. If God has kept your mind, he has kept your heart for the appointment ahead. Do not minimize that. There are things you survived that could have broken another person. There are seasons you walked through that could have destroyed your hope, your sanity, your desire to pray, your ability to believe, your willingness to love, and your hunger for God. But you are still here. You may have cried, but you are still here. You may have been confused, but you are still here. You may have been wounded, but you are still here. You may not understand everything, but the shepherd has not left you. Some people call it toughness. Some call it inner strength. Some call it resilience. But the believer must learn to see deeper. You are not simply tough. You are sustained. You are not simply strong. You are held. You are not simply lucky. Mercy was speaking in the hidden places of your heart. There was a whisper inside you that kept saying, one day this will make sense. One day I will come out. One day God will lift me. One day this pain will not compare to the glory that will be revealed. That whisper was not ordinary optimism. It was the Holy Spirit keeping your conscience alive and your mind anchored when everything around you tried to pull you into despair. This is why peace is so important. Peace is not the absence of trouble. Peace is the evidence that something stronger than trouble is ruling the inward man. Isaiah says, God will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on him. That means the battle is often over focus. The enemy wants to pull your mind away from God and lock it onto what you cannot control. He wants your attention fixed on the betrayal, the bill, the delay, the accusation, the closed door, the unanswered question, the person who hurt you, the thing you lost, the future you fear. But if your mind remains on the Lord, peace becomes a guard around your soul. Here is the correction. If you cannot control it, give it to God and keep your peace. Peace is an act of letting God be God. It does not mean you are careless. It does not mean you ignore responsibility. It means you stop trying to carry what only God can carry. You cannot control every person. You cannot control every outcome. You cannot force every door. You cannot explain every season. You cannot heal every wound in your own strength. But you can surrender. You can trust. You can obey. You can refuse to let what is outside your control steal what Christ has placed inside your spirit. Joseph understood this in a way that should humble us. He went through betrayal, slavery, false accusation, prison, and forgottenness. Yet Scripture never paints him as a man controlled by complaint. He did not understand every chapter while he was living it, but God kept his mind. And when the moment of divine appointment finally came, Joseph's heart did not turn into vengeance. When his brothers stood before him, he did not use power to repay pain. He saw something they could not see. He saw that God had sent him ahead to preserve life. That revelation did not erase what they did. Betrayal was still betrayal. The pit was still real. The years were still painful. But when Joseph recognized the appointment, the pain found meaning. He could say, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. That is not denial. That is discernment. That is what happens when God keeps the mind through suffering. A broken mind would have used the throne for revenge. A preserved mind used the throne for preservation. A bitter man would have punished his brothers. A formed man fed them. Some of you are praying for power, but God is asking whether your mind can be trusted with power. Can you be blessed and not become cruel? Can you be elevated and not become arrogant? Can you be vindicated and not humiliate those who doubted you? Can you receive authority and still remain a servant? Can you enter your divine appointment and recognize that the appointment is not only for you, but for people God intends to preserve through you? This is why the wilderness matters. It heals the places that would misuse the palace. You are being positioned, but positioning requires surrender. God cannot position you if you keep rejecting the process. If you fight every dry place, curse every delay, run from every hidden lesson, and resist every correction, then you are resisting the very hand that is trying to prepare you. But if you accept the process, there is positioning. If you let God teach you, there is sharpening. If you let Him expose the root, there is healing. If you let Him purify appetite, there is freedom. If you let Him keep your mind, there is peace strong enough to carry destiny. The wilderness makes it easier to see the root of your issues. When many things are happening, you can blame everyone else. You can blame your schedule, your job, your family, your enemies, your circumstances, your responsibilities. But when the wilderness strips away the noise, you begin to see what has truly been ruling you. You begin to see the fear, the hunger, the impatience, the need for validation, the weakness in prayer, the anger you buried, the wounds you never surrendered. God reveals these things, not to condemn you, but to free you before they sabotage the appointment. Some of your enemies are not new. Some spirits have been looking for an opportunity for years. They have watched your appetite. They have watched your pain. They have watched your loneliness. They have watched your need to be approved. They have waited for the moment when you'll be tired enough to compromise. But if the wilderness has done its work, they will not meet the same version of you. They will come with old bait and find a renewed mind. They will come with old pressure and find holy peace. They will come with old fear and find a heart stayed on God. Do not underestimate the power of a sound mind. If your mind is not in place, you cannot pray properly. You cannot see clearly. You cannot remain where God placed you. Every wind will move you. Every voice will confuse you. Every opportunity will look divine. Every delay will look demonic. Every pressure will feel like abandonment. But when God gives you a sound mind, you become steady. You can discern. You can wait. You can refuse the shortcut. You can stay in obedience when panic tells you to run. So pray for a sound mind. Pray for eyes that can recognize the shepherd in the valley. Pray for a heart that can keep peace when answers are delayed. Pray for the wisdom to surrender what you cannot control. Pray for the courage to stay where God is forming you. Pray for the humility to let the process finish its work. Pray that you do not enter destiny bitter, distracted, compromised, or ruled by appetite. Because your divine appointment will require more than a gift. It will require a preserved mind. It will require a heart that has learned peace. It will require eyes that can see God's hand in painful chapters. It will require the maturity to say, God sent me ahead even when people meant evil. And if the shepherd has kept you until now, then the valley has not won. You are still being led, still being formed, still being positioned, and still being prepared for what God appointed before you ever understood the process. Many people think the final proof of God's hand is that the wilderness disappears. But sometimes the deeper proof is that your mind did not disappear while you are in it. You walked through pressure, but you did not lose your faith completely. You passed through shadows, but something kept whispering, God is not done with me. You are squeezed, but you are still standing. You are misunderstood, but you still desire God. And here is the contradiction. Some believers are waiting for the palace to prove that God was with them. But the fact that they survived the valley with their heart, still reaching for Him, is already evidence of the shepherd. Here is the spiritual principle. Divine appointment requires a mind that has been kept by God. A gift can open a door, but a sound mind helps you remain faithful inside the door. Talent can attract attention, but peace keeps you from being controlled by attention. Opportunity can put you in a room, but only formation can keep you from selling yours. He prepares your motives. He prepares your mind. Because when the appointment comes, you will need more than excitement, you will need stability. Joseph's life shows us this with great clarity. His brothers threw him into a path of pain, but God turned that path into preservation. He did not understand every chapter while he was living it. He did not know why the pit had to come. He did not know why slavery had to come. He did not know why false accusation had to come. He did not know why prison had to come. But when the appointment finally arrived, when his brothers stood before him, the pieces came together. His cry was not only the cry of pain, it was the cry of revelation. God sent me ahead. What a statement. It means Joseph finally saw that the suffering had not been random. God was preserving a family, a lineage, and a future. This is why you cannot judge the process too early. You do not yet know what God is preserving through your obedience. You do not yet know who will be fed because you refused bitterness. You do not yet know who will be saved because you survived the wilderness. You do not yet know what doors will open because you did not bow to the shortcut. You do not yet know what generation will benefit because you chose the word over bread, purpose over money, and the shepherd over panic. Divine appointments are often bigger than the person walking into them. Here is the correction. Stop asking God only to take you out and start asking Him to form you while He leads you through. There is nothing wrong with wanting deliverance. The Lord delivers the righteous from all afflictions. But if your only prayer is escape, you may miss the instruction. Ask Him, Father, keep my mind. Father, purify my appetite. Father, give me wisdom. Father, show me what is opportunity and what is appointment. Father, do not let me sell destiny for relief. Father, make me strong enough to enter what you prepared without losing who you formed me to be. And do not confuse peace with weakness. Peace is not passive. Peace is spiritual authority over panic. Peace is the decision to let God be God where your hand cannot reach. Peace says, I cannot control the people, but I can keep my heart. Peace says, I cannot force the door, but I can obey the word. Peace says, I cannot explain the valley, but I know the shepherd is here. Peace says, I will not let what I cannot control me. That is not denial. That is maturity. Some of you have been giving importance to distractions. The enemy knows he may not be able to destroy the appointment directly, so he tries to scatter your focus. He pulls your mind toward offenses, old wounds, comments, fears, comparisons, accusations, needs, delays, and things you cannot change. Why? Because if your mind is not in place, you cannot pray properly. You cannot discern clearly. You cannot remain steady where God has placed you. Every wind begins to move you. Every voice begins to sound important. Every opportunity begins to look divine. Every dry season begins to look like abandonment. But the Lord is restoring a sound mind. He is bringing your focus back to Him. He is teaching you to say, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Not because there is no valley, but because He is with you in the valley. Not because there is no enemy, but because He prepares a table in the presence of enemies. Not because there is no shadow, but because His rod and His staff comfort you. The shepherd does not promise that every path will look safe to your eyes. He promises His presence, His guidance, His correction, His comfort, and His faithfulness. You are being positioned. Say that to your soul, I am being positioned. Not punished, positioned. Not forgotten, positioned. Not wasted, positioned. Not buried, positioned. The dry place is not your final address. The valley is not your identity. The wilderness is not your throne. It is a passage. It is a classroom. It is a confrontation. It is a place where appetite bows, where shortcuts are refused, where the enemy is answered by the word, where the shepherd becomes more real than the scenery. Do not miss your divine appointment because an opportunity looked easier. Do not let hunger make decisions for you. Do not let fear negotiate your obedience. Do not let money become the voice that directs your calling. Do not let comfort become your God. Do not let a shortcut steal what God has been preparing for years. If you have to compromise Christ to keep the door, that door is too expensive. If you have to silence conviction to keep the connection, that connection is too costly. If you have to become answerable to people in a way that makes you disobey God, that opportunity is not worth your soul. But also, do not become careless and call it faith. Be wise, be strategic, be led by the Spirit. A fisherman does not disturb the waters and call it fishing. He understands timing. He understands the bait. He understands patience. Ask the Lord for wisdom. Ask Him when to speak and when to be silent. Ask Him where to stand and where to walk away. Ask Him how to carry truth with love, boldness with discernment, and conviction with humility. Divine appointment requires both courage and wisdom. The Lord is not done with you. The present suffering will not compare to the glory that shall be revealed. That does not mean pain is imaginary. It means pain is not final. It means the shepherd is leading even when the path passes through shadows. It means God can take the very thing that looked like loss and use it to preserve life. It means the cry you release at the end may not be, why did this happen? But God, you are a genius in the way you led me. So keep your peace. Keep your mind stayed on Him. Keep your heart clean. Keep your appetite submitted. Keep your eyes open. Keep your obedience stronger than your hunger. Keep your purpose greater than your opportunity. Keep your confidence in the shepherd who has not left you. Because if He has kept your mind, He has kept your heart. And if He has kept your heart, then the appointment has not been lost. The wilderness will not have the final word. The valley will not have the final word. The shortcut will not have the final word. The people who meant evil will not have the final word. The shepherd has the final word. And when the divine appointment comes, you will understand that God was not merely taking you somewhere. He was forming you into the kind of person who could arrive and still belong completely to Him. Father, in the name of Jesus Christ, give us a sound mind. Open the eyes of our heart to recognize your hand in the wilderness, your comfort in the valley, and your purpose in the process. Deliver us from every opportunity that is secretly bait. Purify our appetite so we do not sell divine appointment for temporary relief. Teach us to live by every word that proceeds from your mouth. Keep our peace, strengthen our obedience, and lead us into the appointment you prepared for us. Amen.